so. Okay, so
he says and on the audio well. I have a short slide screen presentation or PowerPoint, whatever you call it. And I just want to talk a little bit through why we have a Consul General here in Atlanta and what we are doing, and also why we focus on FinTech and what we would like to get out of this meeting. So this year, the Netherlands government decided to open a new business platform, but that's actually what we are. Consul General sounds very fancy maybe, but it's just a Dutch business platform paid by the Dutch taxpayers. And I think it's important to underline that what we do here is all to do with the objective of strengthening the economic ties and get more business done and more investments. We do that not, or I do not do that by myself. I have a great team, Coach de Vries, you see that her on the screen, you see the Deputy Consul General, and also our Senior Economic Officer, Esther Smith, who's actually joining us in the call today, and she is, as we speak, in the Netherlands and joining Holland FinTech, and also she will be available for questions later on. If we see why we are here in Atlanta, we focus on one of the biggest growing economic regions of the US, which is the Southeast, including Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, and the focus is on Georgia, Atlanta. At the moment, there are about 80,000 American jobs supported by Dutch-American trade and investment, because that's how we look at it. We just look how much we bring to the US and how much the US brings to the Netherlands. And by opening a new consulate, Consul General here in Atlanta, we try to expand and increase those numbers. Obviously, in sectors that we think are relevant for the Netherlands and where we can make a difference. And those differences we think mainly in logistics, automotive, ag tech, cyber, but also startups, circular economy, creative industries, and life sciences. Why do we think that? Is also because the Netherlands looks very much like the setup, like the region here in the Southeast. It's the hinterland, the infrastructure looks alike. It's also how Atlanta and the region is functioning and servicing the US. And I think also that what we have seen in the past, that we were quite successful in certain sectors in other parts of the US, that we can bring them now to a region that is not always that known for the Netherlands. If we talk about FinTech, I have to say that for us, looking at FinTech, and we will talk much more about it, and that's also why Esther Smith is part of our team, because she is the go-to person on FinTech. If that what you see is in North Carolina, with Charlotte is the #2 second financial center. Atlanta has almost 70% of its payment processing, also Transaction Alley, if I'm correct, called. There's also the third, and it's nice, I love all those numbers, and also you will see them on the screen, is where they are. Atlanta is positioned as the third IT security cluster in the US. And I think also Atlanta is more and more becoming a global player in this region, like we are in Amsterdam and the Netherlands. So that's why I look forward with you all and to hear what the opportunities are. Don't forget that we are here as a business platform, the Netherlands Consul General. We are here to facilitate, we are there to connect, also to connect you to other parts of the US, because the Netherlands Consulate is obviously part of a broader network of the embassy in DC, but also our missions in San Francisco, Chicago, New York, and Miami. So that being said, Caesar, I think I would like to go forward, and I'm wishing you all a really enjoyable and successful presentation today.
Thank you, Consul General. And now, I mean, what we'll do is we'll hand it over to Michael, who's going to talk about more about why we are having this webinar, and as the startup liaison to the Consul General, sort of the connection between the Netherlands, particularly the FinTech ecosystem in Atlanta's ecosystem. So Michael, take it over. Hey Michael, can you go ahead?
Still muted? Okay, hi guys. Goedemiddag, good afternoon. This is Michael Doyes. I'm the startup liaison in the US, based out of San Francisco, but responsible for the country, part of the economic network, so to speak. I just have a few slides that I want to go through why we believe that Atlanta is a great hub for Dutch startups and scale-ups to actually launch their business. So we all know the notion and the big metaphor of technology. Next slide. Yeah. That software is eating the world, which is of course a statement by Mark Andreessen. And I want to illustrate, this slide proves it. I mean, if you go back 10 years ago and you look at the top 5 companies, there was only one company from big tech in the top 5. If you look 2 years back, it's almost, well, all companies are tech companies. And then last year, again, only tech companies were in the top 5 and now twice as big. So it just illustrates the pace of change that is necessary and that is happening in all these sectors, including in FinTech. Now, if you look at FinTech, there are over 5,000 startups out there in the world in FinTech. And these startups are critical to make the transformation a reality actually in the industry. Now, we zoom in on the Netherlands. There are more than 400 companies active in the FinTech, startup companies active in the FinTech space. And we have quite a few well-known FinTech successes, which is great. But we're on a mission, and we're on a mission to help startups and scale-ups grow even faster. As Constantijn van Oranje, who's the special envoy for TechLeap, is saying, we've got a lot of innovative startups, which is great. I mean, if you look at the number of early stage companies that are out there in the Netherlands, it's pretty big. But we need to help these companies internationalize their business. They need to grow faster. So what should you do then? Well, I love this quote from the former CEO of Southwest Airlines. We have a strategic plan, it's called doing things. You have to look at markets where you can really grow fast. Now, let me tell you this. There's 800 million in VC money available for startups in the Netherlands in total. There's 8 billion available in VC money in London, which is obviously in Europe a huge hub we look at. But there's 130 billion VC money available in the US. So we have 800 million in the US, we have 130 billion. So if you want to grow as a startup, you want to grow your business, this is the market to look at. So our mission is to work with the most promising teams, the startups and the scale-ups, and help you guys launch in the US. We do this within the network that Art was talking about. We have an extensive network, but we also have a program and a structure for startups and scale-ups to actually help them to launch successfully. One of the things that we're looking to do is host a scale-up mission in April next year, 2020, around the FinTech South Conference. So that's the first week of April. And what we want to do also in this webinar is obviously share with you guys where the opportunities are, and at the same time, check the appetite from the FinTech community in the Netherlands to see, hey, do you want to participate in such a scale-up mission? That's a mission which is really completely focused on the startup ecosystem, where you can meet the movers and the shakers in the FinTech industry in Atlanta. Atlanta is a great hub for FinTech. I have not seen a hub with so much support from all the different players, incubators, the mayor office, investors, and the broader community. And with our support, we believe that we can turn this into a success. What we want to achieve is we want to see a few great companies from the Netherlands move to the US, start in Atlanta, and then the rest is history. Let's make this move, and I'm looking forward to hear from the Atlanta mayor office, but also from Cabbage, their experiences of dealing in Atlanta. So thank you guys, and later on if you have questions, I'm here, but you can always reach out after that as well. Thanks.
Hey, thank you, Michael. Really appreciate that, and I think you've did a great job sort of stage for what we are going to be discussing moving forward. So with that being said, I want to hand it over.
So back to you, Cesar.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. I want to hand it over to the Director of the Office of International Affairs for a quick welcoming message.
Goedemorgen. Am I saying it correctly?
Correct.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vanessa Ibarra. I'm the director for the Mayor's Office of International Affairs, and it is a pleasure to host this webinar today with everybody. So the Mayor's Office of International Affairs was actually established in 2013, and the main mission of our office is basically how do we continue to position Atlanta globally, whether it's around commerce, innovation, culture, diplomacy, education. We make sure that we are facilitators, that we are connectors in order to continue to enhance Atlanta's reputation around the world. So we are a small team, believe it or not. We are three, myself being the director overseeing the strategy of our office. We have Cesar Vance, our deputy director, whom you've had the opportunity of speaking with. He oversees a lot of what it is around economic diplomacy, around sports diplomacy, and especially around FinTech is something that he has very much been overseeing. And we also have our Global Engagement Officer, Paulina Guzman, who is the liaison with a lot of members of the Consular Corps. We have about 70 countries with a diplomatic presence, 38 binational chambers of commerce, and 17 sister cities. And so there are 6 key objectives that we have been focusing on. We want to do everything, but we make sure to really streamline and focus on these activities. The first one, as I mentioned, trade and commerce. We are not economic developers, but we very much support the various organizations that do this. For instance, the Georgia Department of Economic Development, the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and the Economic Development Authority for the City Invest Atlanta. What we do very much focus on is also helping Atlanta-based companies grow internationally. This is done again in partnership with various organizations, including the Metro Atlanta Chamber. CESAR oversees various workshops to provide the tools for our companies to be able to grow. Because companies that grow internationally have 20% faster growth, 20% higher wages, and 9% less likely to go out of business. In addition to that, we work very closely with the airport around global connectivity. We also attract various events around tourism. You may have heard of the Smart City Expo Atlanta. That is something that we're focusing on very much. Protocol and diplomacy, which is what my colleague Paulina oversees. We welcome about 95 international delegations a year. And we work a lot with various educational institutions within universities, colleges, K through 12, and have been overseeing since 2016 the Atlanta International Startup Exchange. We have a very strong connection with the Netherlands when Prime Minister Rutte came. We also have Minister Koch that came not long ago, and we have had the opportunity of participating at Money 2020 for 2 years in a row. I heard from the state that they're going to be going next year as well. So thank you all.
Thank you, Vanessa. And with that being said, what I like to do is before we hear from our other panelists, I like to go ahead and sort of put Atlanta into perspective for you. And again, my name is Cesar Vence. I'm the Deputy Director at the Office of International Affairs. You can see these numbers. I don't have to read them all for you, but I think this really gives you an idea of what makes Atlanta unique. Our airport is the busiest and fastest, most efficient airport in the world. I mean, I know that you guys have a very efficient airport as well. But this is some of the highlights that I want you to think about as you think about this potential visit to Atlanta in April. We are one of the best tech hubs that is still affordable. That means that if you compare Atlanta to San Francisco and New York, you can still make it here. You also have access to about 16 of the Fortune 500 companies here in the United States. That means clients, that means business developments, that means more dollars for you. In addition to that, Atlanta is a global city, and we kind of have to say this because sometimes when people think about Atlanta, actually Atlanta doesn't even cross their mind when they think about the United States. You know, immediately we think about the gateway markets like New York, San Francisco, Miami, but Atlanta is truly a commercial global hub with 75 nonstop international flights from Hartsfield-Jackson International. We have 37 binational chambers of commerce, including the Netherlands Chamber of Commerce, 78 consular and trade offices, and over 2,600 international businesses. We heard from the Consul General. We are already connected in many ways, but you know, I will say that one of your biggest experts is this gentleman right here, the coach of Atlanta United, Frank DeBoer. But you know, jokes aside, you know, there is a trade connection between Georgia and the Netherlands. You know, tourism is gone up about 35% in the last 5 years. We continue to see the amount of visitors increasing as well as the amount of expenditure in Georgia. There are about 106 Dutch facilities operating in Georgia. You can see some of these names here, some of these very well-known companies. And there are about 42 Georgia companies operating in the Netherlands. So again, we are already connected in more ways than we think. From a logistical perspective, we do have a direct flight to Amsterdam, on a daily direct flight, both on the logistics and the cargo as well as on the passenger side, and our ports are also connected. I know that that's not really related to technology, but just kind of wanted to show you the connection that exists. From a target industry perspective, different from other markets that you may be familiar with, Atlanta is pretty diverse, and we are here to talk about financial technology, but Atlanta also leads in cybersecurity, mobility, health IT, digital media, and supply chain. You may know that there are more films being filmed in Atlanta today than in Hollywood. From an innovation hub perspective, there are over 38 corporate innovation centers here in Atlanta. If you think about some of the larger corporations that have a presence in Atlanta, such as these companies, these are well-known names, they have their innovation center somewhere either in Tech Square, in Buckhead. And the reason for that is because they want to have access to our talent. They want to have access to our airport. They want to have access to our infrastructure. They want to have access to this ecosystem that it's been building over the years here in Atlanta. In addition to that, there's also a very vibrant startup ecosystem. We are going to hear from Cabbage today, which I'm really excited about. But there are other companies such as MailChimp, Cardalytics, and these are industry-wide. So different from other markets. Atlanta is not known for just one particular industry. We are known for a number of industries. And what that means is that allows the economy to actually ride out maybe an economic downturn. It allows the economy to create more jobs and to be more diverse. And what that means for a company that's coming from another country is that you have access to more talent, more innovation, and more potential clients. Another thing that makes Atlanta different, and we briefly touched on this at the beginning, is the low cost of doing business. So if you compare Atlanta to other markets, we really do come on top. What that means, if you think about your ROI and where you get your best return, Atlanta makes a lot more sense than going to a different market. From a cost of living perspective, Atlanta again comes on top compared to other markets. So just wanted to kind of put these things into perspective as you think about your international strategy and entering the U.S. market. As far as workforce, we do have, this is a region that's growing. We have about 6 million people right now, and we are expected to add about 2.5 more million people in the next 20 years. That means, more talent, more jobs, more people. It's a very young region. About 33% of our population is millennial. It's a very well-educated community, very well-educated population with about 38% holding a bachelor's degree or higher. And our universities in our city, in our region, does a very good job of retention, college retention. So our students come here, they stay here, they innovate here, they disrupt here. And lastly, I just wanted to kind of put this out there. I know that you will be hearing from a few of our stakeholders today, but once you get one of us, you get this whole ecosystem of collaboration and partnerships, and really look at this as the support system that you as an international company can count on when you come to Atlanta. Invest Atlanta, I know Vanessa mentioned them at first, is the economic development agency for the city. Amy Love, who is joining us today, she is the new Assistant Director for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Definitely a good person to be in touch with. And if you want to be in touch with any of these organizations, please let us know, and we'll make sure to make an introduction and get you connected. So with that being said, again, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. I now want to hand it over to Christina Morris from FinTech Atlanta, who's going to provide an overview of our FinTech sort of ecosystem here in the city and in the region. Before I do that, I've seen a couple of questions about, will the presentation and audio be available? yes, we are recording this session, and yes, we will send you the presentation after we're done. So with that being said, Christina, welcome to the webinar. And again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Cesar. Thank you everyone for taking the time to sit in on this webinar. Really looking forward to just sharing some brief information about the FinTech ecosystem here in Atlanta and in Georgia in general. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that I share with you is just about FinTech and its long history here in Atlanta. The first that I would say, and I'm sorry, my screen is flipping on me, is that when we talk about FinTech, we're really looking at it in a very much broader scale than just payments, which a lot of people think of when they think of Atlanta if they're thinking about coming here. But it's really anything that powers, facilitates, or enables commerce. And so it's as broad as it can be. When we think about the history of Atlanta, sometimes people think, why here? Why would anybody think about coming to Atlanta first? And really, there's a very, very long history of FinTech and payments here in the Metro Atlanta region, going as far back as 1969 with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta and Georgia Tech's partnership on an electronics payment study, which then turned into the ACH launch in 1973. And over those decades, a lot of companies decided to locate here to have proximity to the payments rail, which then has led to this idea of Transaction Alley. When looking at it, though, that means that other companies that are related to payments have grown here because it is such a collaborative system. When looking at the actual numbers, the Technology Association of Georgia has a State of the Ecosystem report that they do every other year, and really looking at the growth of our industry here. And at the time in 2017, there were about 120 Georgia FinTech companies that had some kind of presence here. So that could be everything from a small staff to a large organization that has its headquarters here. You've seen some of these numbers before, so I won't belabor the topic. But again, when you're thinking about it over time, back in 2016, there were about 30,000 jobs that were related to FinTech based here in the Metro Atlanta area. By 2019, there were already 38,000 and growing. At the last count, I believe we had about 163 companies that are FinTech with a presence here in the Metro Atlanta region. And so, again, it is growing very, very quickly here, and we expect it to continue. For those of you who have not been to the Metro Atlanta area before, this is a very busy map of Metro Atlanta and where a lot of these FinTech companies are located. Some of them have moved office locations, but generally speaking, part of the reason you call it Transaction Alley is because they are all located very closely within one another from south of the Metro Atlanta region near the border to Alabama at a location called Columbus, Georgia, all the way up through to Alpharetta, which is about, depending on where you're coming from, about half an hour north of the center of Atlanta. And so there are a lot of companies that are located here, and more every day. Just to give you a little bit of sense of what FinTech Atlanta is all about, it is, as Cesar said, a very collaborative area here. And so about 5 years ago, several organizations came together thinking about all of the efforts that are being put forward regarding FinTech, and really thinking about making sure that we are all working together to raise the profile of Atlanta so that people think of our region first as a place to educate your workers, to get access to talent, to start, grow, and build your company. And so the original organizing organizations were the Metro Atlanta Chamber, the Technology Association of Georgia, and the American Transaction Processors Coalition, really looking at supporting the whole industry and making sure that we are growing the ecosystem. And what you see here is just a number of the companies that are board and leadership level at our organization. So they vary, in size and in footprint. The purpose of FinTech Atlanta is to, as I said, sort of raise all boats when it comes to looking at the FinTech ecosystem. And so we are very heavily focused on supporting the access to talent here for organizations that are looking to either get talent within Georgia or from outside the region. Those are one of the things that we want to support. And you'll hear from one of our really amazing partners over at the Georgia FinTech Academy a little bit later. We're really looking to make sure that we're supporting connections between retailers or large fintechs and smaller fintechs by making some connections and allowing them to meet one another, to learn from one another, and then possibly just start conversations that we hope would result in pilots or full-blown partnerships. Again, we tell the story of Atlanta so that if people are thinking about where they want to go to start their U.S. operations, that they come here first and look really closely at the Atlanta market and think about us as a place that would be a good home for them. And finally, of course, we're always trying to make sure that we are educating both our state and national legislators about anything that is being put in front of our government decision makers as it relates to policies that are either beneficial to or potentially harmful for our fintech companies. And so what our purpose is to really bring the ecosystem together and make sure that we have a coordinated effort. You'll see all of this information when you get the copy, but you can see some of the things that we've been working on in the previous year. But in the interest of time, I won't read all of that to you. One of the other things that we're really proud about as it relates to FinTech Atlanta is our thought leadership. And so there are a number of events that we go to every year. What you see on your screen is some photographs and some stats from our last visit to Money 2020 Las Vegas back in October. We had 13 Georgians on stage, including one main stage keynote. Georgia really has a very good showing at Money 2020. Usually it's about 1,000 attendees, which means that it really provides an opportunity for people to network. And our ecosystem and the leadership from FinTech Atlanta makes sure that we go and visit our FinTech companies. So you'll see groups of people standing there with a little badge that says FinTech Atlanta so that people know that they are being supported by our Georgia economic developers as well as our ecosystem in terms of saying thank you for being part of our region. So the last thing that I'll hit really, really quickly, and you heard it mentioned previously, is about FinTech South. It is the Southeast's largest FinTech conference. It will be taking place on April 20th and 21st, and you'll hear some additional information about this event. But what we're really excited about is it has been growing every year. It's going to be for the third year at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium where Atlanta United and the Falcons play. And you'll see that there are about 1,400 registrants who came last year, and a great number of companies. It's a wonderful place to meet other Atlanta companies as well as international companies that are based or have a presence in Atlanta. So we would love for you to come out, meet some folks, and hopefully you will join us in the end of April. So I think then I will turn it back over to you, Cesar.
Thank you, Christina.
Sure.
Charles, you're on. Let me just go ahead and give you access. But now I want to hand it over to Charles Potts from ATDC, who's going to talk to us about this fabulous place and really one of the biggest assets that we have here in Atlanta. Really, we couldn't talk about innovation and really entrepreneurship without talking about ATDC, Georgia Tech, and the partnership that we have. And Charles has really been kind of, one of the key players in the FinTech ecosystem here in Atlanta. So Charles, the room is yours.
Thank you, Cesar. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. So thank you, everybody, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the kind words. And as Cesar alluded to earlier, we can't wait to show you our version of Dutch football and what Frank de Boer is doing here with Atlanta United, Ajax style. That's my plug for the U.S.'s greatest soccer club right now. So ATDC is that place that when an entrepreneur is looking for a place to call home, to build their business, to build their company, ATDC was created really as that incubation place, space, mission. ATDC is the Advanced Technology and Development Center at Georgia Tech. It's a joint venture between the State of Georgia Department of Economic Development and the university system through the Georgia Institute of Technology. And our goal, and Cesar, I am trying to, let's see, can I get, I can't, there we go. Oop. It's a little lagging there. Okay, there we go. Our goal is to really empower the entrepreneurs to have a place and resources to incubate their ideas and grow their businesses. I particularly run the FinTech practice inside the incubator. We have a focus on medical technology, retail technology, advanced manufacturing and IoT lines of business, and a heavy focus around FinTech specific to this conversation today. I've been fortunate to be a serial entrepreneur myself, having incubated my last company at ATDC before we graduated, and physically moved up the street to grow our business. But one of the things that we find is critically important to helping startup entrepreneurs and startup companies is really around these kind of four key mission statement parameters. A place to learn, really learn the lean startup methodology, learn from coaches and entrepreneurs how to really run and operate a company, a place to launch the business successfully. We have a very high degree of success, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it gives us both a physical and virtual space around which we can help these entrepreneurs launch their business. Really the resources necessary to scale, and that's both pilot customers, potential capital, all of the resources you're hearing about today. We make this a big part of what we do as an organization to help these entrepreneurs. And then, as I mentioned, succeed. 5 years after graduation, 90% of all ATDC portfolio companies are still in business. And to a large extent, that really is because of this very robust ecosystem that we have and all the resources we have to make available to our startups. Now, the other interesting thing is we're a big, old, quiet secret. We have been in existence for going on 40 years. We are the oldest and largest incubator in the country. Because we are a joint venture and a public incubator, there is no equity relationship between us and our companies. So we literally are part of the Georgia economic development ecosystem. Our goal and mission is to help create successful businesses that are going to create jobs and put people to work in the state of Georgia. So as you're thinking about expanding and entering into the U.S. marketplace, if you've got an early stage or startup that needs a place to incubate your business and make the connections into both Georgia and into the U.S., ATDC is commonly viewed as a home and a place that can take place. And we are working with a number of different economic development functions around the world to make that possible. We have physical statewide reach because we're part of the Georgia ecosystem. We can physically locate resources and offices around the state, make our mentoring and coaching available to people around the state, as well as our education and curriculum. Our education curriculum is really where someone with a very new and innovative idea can come and learn the lean startup methodology. This education platform, the 250 plus classes we teach both in Atlanta and around the state every year, are open to anybody that wants to walk through the door. This is not just university students. This is not just people affiliated with Georgia Tech. This can be serial entrepreneurs. This can be first-time entrepreneurs. This is open to anybody who wants to come in and take part in our education program. Once you've really got your idea, your company that you're going to work on, you apply for membership into being a portfolio company, and you enter in what we call the Accelerate level. Right now, we have about 150 companies in this Accelerate level, about 35 of which are pure FinTech. And as Christina pointed out, one of the things that we're very cognizant of and also very fortunate is we've got a very broad spectrum of FinTech companies. Everything from crypto and blockchain products to lending products to traditional payments and banking solutions, wealth tech, reg tech, compliance, capital markets products. So we have a broad spectrum of FinTech companies focused in this incubation program. It's in this Accelerate stage that most of this learning takes place. We see companies get to about $500,000 in annual revenue in this place, and they're getting polished around their product market fit. They're getting good customer traction, and they are looking to then scale up and bring on venture money. It's at that stage they tend to move up into our signature level, and this is where we're really rounding out the businesses. This is where we're rounding out their scale, their product market, go-to-market strategy, and preparing them to take on serious venture capital, which they can apply to the business model and the business that they've created. And as companies get to about $2 million in annual revenue, that's the point at which they tend to graduate and leave our incubator. Companies stay somewhere between 24 and 72 months in our incubator. And to a large extent, it's a place where they can really refine what they're doing. And because we're a public service, public economic development, they can have a little more time to grow and succeed. The 5 pillars around which we do this are critically important: community, both the physical space, and all of the different meetings, programs, catalyst meetings, entrepreneur get-togethers. Our core education curriculum, as I mentioned, is critically important to helping people learn how to be successful at building a business. The physical common space, which you saw from the photo at the beginning of the slide deck. We have both the co-work space as well as subsidized office space. And then a wide set of coaching resources and entrepreneurs with a lot of expertise in all areas of the business that are available to every one of our companies. And then the other real thing that a lot of people look for is our industry connection. As you've heard, there's a lot of companies here in Atlanta, in the state of Georgia, and they are all partners with us in the incubator and all available to work with our companies and help them with their products, with their strategies, and their go-to-market solutions here. These are just some of the companies, as you've seen, that our startups have been able to work with, many of whom have created a great deal of success. And then we also obviously have the university system and the connections to Georgia Tech for technology resources that can help support these businesses. And then ultimately, we have dedicated resources to help with funding, both venture capital and non-dilutive kind of government-based funding programs. Some of our exits, you guys are seeing a lot of company logos and tombstones. It is a very robust marketplace with a great deal of success. One of which, most recent success, Greenlight Financial, graduated October of last year, has raised a little north of 84 million in venture capital. Graduated last year. They build a parent-student budgeting, financial literacy card-based platform. Great deal of success white labeling with a lot of financial institutions here in the U.S. Okay, so with that, I will just let it go back to you guys. Just keep in mind that if you're thinking about entering the U.S. and looking for a place in Atlanta to start your venture and create your entryway here, ATDC is a home with a lot of resources and a lot of capabilities to help support your mission. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you guys with the trade mission soon.
Hey, thank you, Charles. We
Cesar.
appreciate that overview of ATDC, and I think that also kind of leads, the way for our next presenter, which is Tommy Marshall from the Georgia FinTech Academy. And I think this is one of the best hidden secrets here in Atlanta, in Georgia, and it's a good a good show of the collaborative effort that the state and the region actually enjoys, which is this partnership between the public sector and the private sector. So with that being said, go ahead, Tommy. You have control of the board.
Thanks, Cesar. Tommy Marshall. I'm the executive director of the Georgia FinTech Academy. Great to be with you all today, and it's been it's really been exciting for me just personally to be involved with your efforts over the last year. I'm still fondly remembering the opportunity to meet with Minister of Trade Sigrid Kaag when she was here back in March, and we got to have some direct conversation about the fintech ecosystem in the Netherlands and the opportunities between the Netherlands and this Atlanta fintech ecosystem. And I was just remembered again as I paid my Spotify bill on Sunday night that Adyen is a very active part of my family's everyday lives. And I think just to emphasize a few of the comments made from Christina and a few of the others earlier, BitPay, their European headquarters, as many of you may know, is in Amsterdam. And then also the Intercontinental Exchange, which is headquartered here in Atlanta, runs the ICE Clear Netherlands platform, which is the continental Europe clearinghouse for European equity derivatives products. And I always like to highlight particularly ICE and BitPay because it's just emphasizing, again, some kind of key points where we've got a really kind of multifaceted set of fintech companies here in Atlanta. The FinTech Academy, so let me talk a little bit about that. This started a little over a year ago, and it's a response to a measured demand for 6,000 FinTech-ready professionals just in the state of Georgia alone. And our university system, which, hang on, how do I? Help me with the advancing, Cesar.
Okay, I can drive the slides for you. No problem.
Just do that. That'd be great. Give me that.
Here we go.
The university system is quite immense in Georgia. We've got 26 schools, 333,000 students. It's $8 billion plus budget across the system. And there's schools, several of which you may know of or that were mentioned previously here: Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, Georgia State. Those are our tier 1 research institutions. So it's quite broad. And the university system, of course, with this scale is capable of addressing the demand of 5,000 to 6,000 FinTech ready professionals a year. But we wanted to create kind of a focused initiative to help make that possible faster. And that's what the Georgia FinTech Academy is all about. If you can give me the next one. So if we look at the next slide, Cesar, thanks. I think beyond the 6,000, there's also a need for more diverse students and professionals to draw from. So this is, and diversity amongst every dimension, race, economic background, ethnicity, gender, and as you know, I know I'm closer to kind of the challenges around how to create a more diverse workforce in the United States, which has been particularly challenging particularly in the FinTech areas. We were over-indexed into kind of white males, particularly around the software development, that part of the landscape. And there's kind of a remarkable leadership and an understanding that if we can build more diverse workforces within our really all our companies, but certainly in the FinTech companies, we have a greater likelihood of higher levels of growth and success. So we're powering that need and demand through the Georgia FinTech Academy. Next one, thanks. There's 4 components that make up how the FinTech Academy strategy operates. So I'm going to start in the top right here around talent curriculum. And this is creating FinTech specific courses that we're offering today to undergraduates and tomorrow to graduates across the system, graduate level students across the system. We've generated 5 FinTech courses that are being delivered today system-wide. We had 1,200 students take at least one of these FinTech-related courses. I'll show you the courses in a minute. And it looks like we're on track to have over 600 to 700 students take at least one of these courses in the next 2 semesters. So we're certainly our most mature with our FinTech Academy along that track. The next following clockwise is innovation-driven research. The idea here is that you come to our research window at the Georgia FinTech Academy with any FinTech-related research problem, and we are able to broker you into the appropriate research team at the tier 1 research institutions, which are Georgia Tech, Georgia State, and the University of Georgia. The idea, of course, if we can help you ID those teams more quickly, the appropriate team, get you connected with the right resources, that's, of course, adding value and getting more research projects going more quickly, which we know is a vital ingredient to the true creation of new innovative products and services. Experiential learning is where we have engagement from the FinTech companies in accessing students for student projects, how we get students engaged in internships, multi-month or year-long apprenticeships with the companies, engaged in our ecosystem, and then of course placing students into full-time roles. And then the last bit is professional learning, and this is where we build FinTech educational courseware that we sell either directly to FinTech companies themselves or we sell out in the world. So we're building those courses now. Georgia Tech has a very significant professional education capability. So they are my partner in creating that professional education content. We'll be launching our first set of classes or courses for access in March, April of 2020. I will be selling a portion of those courses out in the world. So people in the Netherlands can enroll in those courses and take those courses, or I'm very much hoping they will. And those are all the 4 components of the FinTech Academy. To give you a sense of just these metrics that are measuring on those 4 components I just told you, the curriculum, 500 to 600 students. We've already enrolled 270 as of the metrics from last night for the spring semester. So that's the one that's about to start in January. Placements, we want to do over 150 interns in the summer, 50 apprenticeships, and at least 200 full-time. I think we can probably do an X factor higher than that, but we're still trying to really understand where we sit from a baseline standpoint right now. We're out asking further FinTech companies in our community to support us financially. And then we want, as I mentioned, we want to have at least 5 of the professional ed courses online by April, and ideally sell 700 to 800 participants into those courses during the course of the year. So, and then just, I guess, quickly, these are the 5 FinTech Academy courses that any student in our university system can take. So you can see the first 2 courses, Foundations of FinTech, Financial Technologies, are kind of a bit more survey related. Commercial Banking and FinTech is very focused on the commercial banking aspects and where FinTech supports that. And then Financial Data Analytics and Info Security are, of course, extremely critical skills to be learning and talking about as it relates to this industry. I think I'm gonna stop there, Cesar. I know we're kind of getting pressed for time here, but there's more that I'd love to get your feedback on from a professional ed standpoint that you can take a look at in the materials for after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. Really appreciate that. And again, everybody, we will make these slides available to you after the webinar. So feel free to look through them. And also, you'll have everyone's contact information if you want to reach out to any of the partners. So with that being said, I now would like to welcome Sam Tauzik from Cabbage. Sam is the head of global policy for the company, and he is going to provide a company overview and sort of tell the story of Cabbage here in Atlanta.
Thank you very much, Cesar, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody on this call. Thank you so much for joining. As Cesar said, my name is Sam Tauzik. I run policy at Cabbage. That includes a number of other things with our partnership relations, growing in new markets, and of course, growing in new products. And I must say that Atlanta, Georgia really is a fantastic place to do business. I am going to expand upon some of the points made previously in this presentation to give you more of a feel about how we do it at Cabbage here in Georgia. But I cannot emphasize how important the innovation community here in Atlanta has been for our growth and our success at Cabbage. I'm dropping my contact information into the chat right now, by the way, in case anybody would like to follow up later. But essentially, Cabbage started about 10 years ago with a very simple idea, which was we wanted to use the underlying real-time cash flow data that small businesses are generating in their everyday transactions and everyday operations and empower the small businesses to use that data to speak for them in the context of a credit underwriting decision. That is to say that we know how healthy a business is. We can create the income statement, the cash flow statement, and the balance sheet for them just by leveraging their underlying data and giving them a more holistic shake, if you will, at access to capital that they can use to reinvest and grow the business. We've been doing this for a while, and lately we've moved into more cash flow based solutions overall. That includes launching a payments product most recently and moving into much more holistic cash flow management solutions in 2020. Atlanta and Georgia overall has really been by our side to help us with this growth and frankly right now, major transformation of the company from just a lending platform with some software as a service components with large global bank partners to a holistic end-to-end cash flow solution for small businesses. So we talked a little bit about why Georgia is so great and attracts such awesome talent. A lot of that has to do with the birthplace of the ACH, but also really deep Fortune 500 technical folks that were already here in Atlanta that we've been able to harness and access really deep knowledge networks around how logistics and corporate finance and high-end capital markets trading operations and really deep in IP resources and IT network solutions and bring them into an innovation culture that already existed here in Atlanta and create our own cabbage culture around that. It was really great to hear from Tommy because the university system really has fed a lot of this growth organically in the borders of Georgia and is continuing to do so. And we've spent a lot of time with the university system to elaborate on our labor force needs. And we've been incredibly thrilled to see how responsive our educational partners have been to providing very well-trained cybersecurity, network architect solution, front-end mobile developers, and the likes to our labor pool here in Atlanta that Kabbage has very much tapped into. To give you a sense of scale, this year alone we'll put out about $3 billion of small business capital just in the United States. We have just about 600 employees, most of them based here in Georgia, and almost all of our technical data science and day-to-day core infrastructure and operations folks sit here in Midtown Atlanta, where I'm speaking from you today. What's important, though, is we didn't do this on our own with respect to the business community. I know that you all saw this map earlier, but the logos represented here really are the core foundation of innovation and success. We have worked with and on the networks and rails of many of the payments providers, the core processors, the system of record companies that are born and raised and succeeding here in Georgia. And we try to our very best ability to kind of stay local with our partnerships. Proximity and the geography are very important for that. That's one, but also a shared sense of mission and culture, both in the sense of what we're trying to do at Kabbage, but overall change the way that we do lending and payments and banking in general. We see that within our partners here in the Atlanta metro area. And I can't exactly tell you every partner we have, but what I can say is that many of the logos represented on this screen are critical to our success. To continue to promote that, a couple of years ago, as we talked about, FinTech Atlanta was launched, and I know we talked briefly about this, but I really want to underscore how the business and policy community has come together in a beautiful public-private partnership that is rare to see in American cities around a topic and an industry that is so disruptive as FinTech is. The logos on this screen are fairly large companies, but together we've peeled off kind of the best and brightest within those companies to focus on how do we continue to develop that talent and the funding networks and promote Atlanta, and of course work with our government and regulatory partners to encourage innovation. And we've had great success around that. I want to speak just briefly to the funding side of this. I'll be honest that 10 years ago when we were raising money for Cabbage in Atlanta, it was somewhat difficult, but over time with really good commitment from innovation labs and sandbox experiments and other strategic operations within these companies you see on the screen, we've seen a huge revolution really of startups in Atlanta, many of which are beginning to support the Cabbage ecosystem and architecture overall. And we've seen more seed money, venture capital, and of course, large institutional money begin to migrate from Silicon Valley and New York City into the Atlanta ecosystem. And really success breeds additional success here. So we're very happy to see that. And very happy to see a lot of these folks begin to work more again with the talent and labor pipelines, and now work with the legislator to encourage innovation sandboxes and new market innovation tax credits, which we'll work on in 2020. Briefly, you know, Atlanta isn't really the tech hub like San Francisco is, but it's a great place to make a home because you can get to anywhere in the United States in about 4 hours. And trust me, we do. We do have partners across the United States and across the globe. So this is an amazing place to locate a US headquarters for your operations, because you can honestly stay connected to all of the United States, including Central and South America with a single Delta flight. And that's exactly what we do. Moving on, I want to go back to this concept of a innovative community. We at Cabbage have always been incredibly thankful for the mindset that we have here in Georgia. And that mindset is what we want to do is see companies start in Georgia, grow in Georgia, scale really in Georgia, and succeed in Georgia. And our city, county, state, and federal partners have been critical to that. And what we say at Cabbage for our small businesses is let the bakers bake. And in many respects, our government partners have done the same. And the Federal Reserve is certainly a key function to that. We have wonderful relationships with them that has allowed us to better understand the payments ecosystem and partner with large traditional financial institutions. So all that to say, I know we're a little bit tight on time. Cabbage is here in Atlanta for the long haul. It's been a really wonderful path to join all of these partners on, and we look forward to continuing down this road and becoming an even larger, more established force here in Georgia. And we hope that you all can join us.
Sam, thank you so much for the overview and taking the time to share more about the Cabbage story. And you've done a great job telling the story of FinTech and why a company like Cabbage chose Atlanta to grow and to be successful. I know that we are in between you and some great cocktails for some of you participating in this webinar. So we are going to pretty much take the next 5 minutes to close these, and I do want to open the virtual floor for any questions that anybody may have. I do want to again reiterate what's been said earlier. Atlanta, it's a gateway to the United States. We've talked about the airport. We talked about our academic institutions. We talked about the ecosystem. We talked about our low cost of doing business as well as a low cost of living, and of course the quality of life. So I do encourage you all to please, do come visit. Please do think about joining this delegation to FinTech South. We are working with our partners to see if there is a way to facilitate your participation during this event. And then now, I know there was a couple of questions that came in, so I want to go ahead and try to take a stab at these questions for you. And also, again, feel free to send in any questions that you may have. And I do want to pose these questions to all of the panelists if you're still on. But one of the questions was to talk about Atlanta as a landing hub for the U.S., not just the state, but also what's available for startups to come to Atlanta. So very briefly, Atlanta has, as you saw, a pretty robust innovation ecosystem, and there is a lot of partners. You heard from really a small number of partners today. But I think one of the things that you get here that you don't get in other places is access. You have access to not only the economic development stakeholders, private sector, as well as the universities. And there are also some resources available from the public sector to support, sort of your international expansion and your international, entering into Atlanta. So with that being said, in an organization like the Metro Atlanta Chamber, Invest Atlanta, the Georgia Department of Economic Development, ATP, the Technology Association of Georgia, these are all organizations that are here ready to help, ready to connect, and ready to make sure that you have, I guess, what we call a soft landing here in Atlanta. So I hope that covers that question. And I don't know if anybody would like to add anything to these, but really, when we talk about Atlanta as a landing hub for startups, it really, this is a very unique place. And of course, we're a little biased because we're here, but Atlanta has a lot to offer. And one of the things that we'll also share with you is the Atlanta ecosystem map. This will give you a good idea of what's happening here as it relates to resources. Esther, is there anything that you'd like to add, or Michael?
I think, hold on, I get the echo, sorry. The story about access, I think that's good. Access to capital, access to talent, access to market, it became really clear in the webinar. But obviously also in terms of cost of living, I think that's also a big one, right? I mean, I'm based out of San Francisco. You could move to San Francisco, try to get a development team there. I wish you good luck. It's going to be very hard to find these people. They're very expensive and they move around to companies all the time. So you burn through your money very fast, and that's very different in Atlanta than in New York or in San Francisco. I think that's also a big aspect. And then, well, the whole supporting ecosystem that we've been discussing here in this webinar, for me, that's the main point. You need that support to get off the ground, and that's why I think Atlanta is a great starting hub.
Thank you. That was great. And we didn't pay Michael to say that.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, maybe I can add a little more. This is Esther Smith, also from Amsterdam. I don't want to repeat everything that you've already heard, but I really would want to underscore the friendly business climate and the ease of doing business. I think that was even evident at a small event we hosted at Money 2020 in Las Vegas, where I invited some Dutch startups to come. And in that room with the Atlanta community, they said to me, we've made better connections here than at the whole conference. So just the willingness of the Atlanta folks and the thought leaders to connect with young and growing companies is really something that stands out, and I think can be really beneficial when entering into a new market. So don't forget that when you're looking at a place to land in the US.
Thank you, Esther. Charles, I know you want to.
Yeah, I'll give a real world example. When the executive team from Backbase was looking to come to the United States and expand, I spent some time with them a few years ago, and one of the things they found real quickly to second a lot of what you heard here, they found a general manager and talent who knew the FinTech space domestically in the U.S. They found business partners and channel partners. They found full staffing people who had expertise and resumes selling into financial service companies. They found the partnerships in those companies, they hit the ground running. And it really was fundamentally because this ecosystem, these people you've heard on this phone call, the resources we have here can create that speed to market, that focus that you really can't find as concentrated and as successful as you find here. We have a long track record, and with that comes a lot of great expertise and knowledge that's just right here in our own backyard. And that is a profound reason to launch a FinTech business into the United States out of Atlanta.
Thank you, Charles. And everybody, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close it, but I do want to pass it over to the Consul General to give some final thoughts and remarks. And again, on behalf of the City of Atlanta, on behalf of the Mayor's Office, I do want to thank all the speakers. I do want to thank all the participants for joining us this morning. And please do see us as a resource. Please do see us as a partner. We are here to support you in any way that we possibly can. I've sent my contact information, and we'll share that with you later on today, along with the presentation and some other resources that you can find. But Consul General.
Yes, well, thank you all. Thank you, Cesar, for moderating this session, this call. There is a Dutch business opportunity here, and that's clear. I was consul in San Francisco before, and now being in Atlanta, it's all what's being said is true in the sense that it's cheaper. There is a very welcoming ecosystem of facilitating new businesses. That's good for us, but I'm more interested in all your replies and all those companies that are interested to come over to Atlanta as a gateway for the US. And I would like to refer all the time to that. Atlanta is a great place to be, but it's also a great place to facilitate and get your entry in the US market. I would like to thank the speakers for everything they have said and shared with us and the experience, but I think we have to look forward into the future. So I hope to see a few of you, or maybe all of you, at the FinTech South. Know that my office with Esther Smith as the go-to person for the FinTech community in the Netherlands is always available here in Atlanta. Follow us on Twitter at NL in Atlanta, or otherwise connect to us by email. And by that, I would like to close down this call and hope to see more of you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy.
This is great. I never actually saw, is this the first webinar that I actually sit in? So to see Zoom and how you're able to get everybody.